I am Will Yakowitz. I'm a senior writer here at Forbes magazine. I'm with Christian Angermayer, who runs the Pyrron Investment Group. Christian, great to see you.
Thanks for having me. A pleasure.
Absolutely. So I want to start with enhanced games. It's a fascinating concept, and I know you and Aron D'Souza co-founded it, and yeah, you can kind of just tell us what it is.
Well, you almost said it, like winning. It's a modern take on the Olympics, which we all know, which just happened. But the big difference is that performance-enhancing drugs, colloquially called doping, is kind of not just allowed, but also endorsed. So we want to showcase what the human body can do with the scientific help of medically approved performance-enhancing drugs.
And what is the, I guess why, simply, why should enhanced games exist, and what are you guys trying to achieve?
Many reasons. First of all, I love sports, like many people do. So in generally, I would say creating a new sports franchise was always one of my dreams on the bucket list. Second reason is, if you look at the Olympics, it's actually highly unfair what's happening, because people do dope. And in the Olympics, obviously, that is kind of cheating, because they do it in the darks, they do it, not officially. The crazy number, by the way, not from us, but from WADA, sort of the anti-doping agency, is that round about 44, I think is the number, percentage of track and field athletes at a certain point in their career use performance-enhancing drugs.
Wow.
So a good portion of the people in the Olympics have either used it before to prepare, or maybe even used it during the Olympics.
Right.
And that is highly unfair. So this was the third point is, the Olympics are extremely unfair when it comes to pay. So they make billions every event, and they give practically zero to the athletes. I'm not just talking that they give them zero money. Even if you go into the headlines some weeks ago, the whole sort of the living, what they provide, the food, like people complain about it. It's like, these athletes are your asset. They are the most important people. By the way, in many other sports franchises, it is positively done the right way. Like if you look at soccer, if you look at any form of sports, the top athletes are paid really well, because they are the main guys. So we want to create a track and field Olympic-style sports event where the athletes are in the center, not just of attention, but also really get the financial reward they deserve.
Right.
So many reasons to do it, but short version, it's going to be fucking cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of money, how much are these athletes going to make, or what's the potential?
So we're just designing the details. So the first event going to be end of next year.
Okay.
We already said that we want to give a prize money per category, and we want to start with 10 categories of $1 million for breaking a world record.
Wow, okay.
Then we will have a lower prize money for winning gold, and we also think about taking a certain part of our revenues and attaching it to the social media engagement of every athlete, so that practically, even if you're not winning gold, but if you're one of the fan favorites, and if you are driving engagement and attention to the enhanced games, you should also be rewarded. So we're just coming up with the details, but these are going to be the three pillars. They're going to be a high reward money, prize money for breaking a world record. They're going to be another pot of money for gold, silver, bronze, and then they're going to be a social media kind of engagement reward.
Right. Wow. So $1 million for breaking a world record. And what sports are you starting with?
Starting with again. We have still 2-3 sort of categories we want to finalize, because we're just going actually through the application process. We have more than 1,000 professional athletes, I think it's even 1,500, who have applied. By the way, some of them, actually not little, were in the Summer Games. Doesn't mean they were doing doping in the Summer Games, but at least they're willing from now on to use performance-enhancing drugs. So it's going to be like swimming, running, all the track and field, all the very obvious one where we're not going to do archery. So stuff like that.
Nice. And, obviously steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs are forbidden in the sports world.
So we do have rules. So first of all, by the way, when people ask me, isn't that illegal? I want to clarify the terms. So at the moment, performance-enhancing drugs, colloquially called doping, in the Olympics are excluded by the Olympics as a private organization.
Right.
So it's literally like you and I start a club, and we're like, we don't like Diet Coke in the club. We can make rules because it's our own event, but that does not mean people always use that word wrong. It's performance-enhancing drugs. At least most of them are not illegal as long as they medically approved products.
Right.
So what we are doing, we have actually 3 rules. Rule number 1, most important one, medically approved drugs only. We at ATAI, one of our core sort of pillars or core investment themes is biotech. And I just believe in science. And FDA approved drug is sort of the gold standard globally for how you prove something is both works and has sort of little enough, because anything has side effects, but actually has hopefully little side effects, but we also know all the side effects. So an FDA approved drug, we have all the transparency we need. So that is one rule, medically approved medications, drugs only. Second, which obviously goes hand in hand, you have to have a doctor who's prescribing it to you. So we want somebody who publicly says, I'm the doctor for this person. I'm responsible, means also I'm responsible that this is done responsibly. So you have to have a doctor who sort of takes the responsibility, most likely even publicly. And third one, which is maybe the most important one, we're gonna do a health screening before every single event. And we do not allow any side effects which are dangerous. So most performance-enhancing drugs, if you look at the hard science, are very low risk. People throw out the word risk, but nobody defines it. And a good friend of mine, who is one of the most genius neuroscientists of our time, Professor David Nutt, he I think it's 10 years ago, even longer, he defined for the first time what is the risk of taking a drug. And he looked at all the both medically approved drugs and illegal drugs and non-classified like alcohol. And he made a very, very comprehensive risk score. Practically, can you die when you take it? Can you have damage? Is the damage irreversibly? And so on. I think it's like, I don't know, 15 or whatever of certain parameters. And then he created a risk score. And then why this is so important is practically that can guide a lot of discussions we're going to have today about drugs, medical drugs, recreational drugs, hopefully recreational drugs, which soon become medically used, whatever. Because if you look at performance-enhancing drugs, steroids, one of them, there's some other categories, they are, if taken properly with medical guidance, they are at very low risk. Infinitive less risk than alcohol or anything we all do the whole day, if properly taken. We gonna tell our athletes and their doctors, do it responsible, do it in the medical framework, then they have very low risk. But if you exaggerate, if you take too much, whatever, we're gonna see it because the side effects, and mostly for steroids, for example, the side effects are around the heart, and they're visible. So we tell everybody, if you prepare for a year and then show up and have a heart damage, you're not gonna start. So we're gonna be, and that is maybe another point where athletes love us, we're gonna be the most healthy and safe, because there's, by the way, the Olympics did crazy statements, which by the way shows, there I'm a little bit critical, that they know nothing about science. Some of the Olympics commissioners, I think Lord Coe, or how I spell his name, big shout out, because I really think he's an idiot. I have to say it, because it's so unscientific. Somebody's gonna die. I was like, no, we're gonna be much safer than the Olympics, because if we test everybody, they will, we put a limit on what they're doing, but also, if they did it, if the Olympics did test everybody, they would have less incidents. So the question is, by the way, why are they not doing it?
And do you know the answer?
Well, I think because they're very thrifty, they don't spend, it's going to be expensive. We're going to have a full team of doctors with the best equipment, whatever, to make a health check. You could do it, it's just expensive. But again, I think the athletes are totally worth it. They are our sort of main partners in it. And second, I believe the Olympics are terribly afraid of showing that most of them, or at least some of them do something. And so I think they don't want to look at it. And why do they do that? I think because they don't want to lose their narrative of we are the clean ones, But also, by the way, again, the Olympics in France were like a gift for us, because so many things went wrong. And there were so many discussions about China, whatever. There were so many, it's such a political thing. And we don't want to be political. It's very simple. These are the rules. We're going to test it. Everybody's tested the same way. There's no like gray zones, no leeways and whatever.
Right. And speaking of kind of politics and countries, like it's not going to be nationalistic, right?
It's just like the best athletes, full stop.
Right. And one more question before we move on. But, obviously you're an investor and this is a venture-backed business. Can you kind of talk about the economics? Like, what do you see as the return? Like, is this going to be ticket sales? Are you selling? Is this going to be like a live Netflix thing? Like,
yeah. So ticket sales, even in the sort of other sports, is not the biggest driver.
Yeah.
So in the core, we are a sports franchise like any other, where the two main drivers are sponsoring and TV rights. So in general, media rights. We were completely blown away from the response from these two groups, both from sponsors and from media outlets. But if you had asked me like a year ago when we started planning it, I would have said, I'm prepared to have 3 like years of uphill battle where we're doing great events, but maybe the big brands are not gonna sponsor us. The big whatever,
not going to be
the Nikes of the world, the big media outlets are not going to touch us because it's going to be controversial. By the way, way quicker than I thought. Really, like, you tell me, and like obviously everybody can judge for themselves, but like my feeling is that this was way less of an uphill battle in the public perception. Some people are critical, and by the way, I like it when people are critical because I want to be controversial, because being controversial is actually driving engagement.
Right.
Yeah. But like it's way less than I thought. And sometimes I cynically or funnily say I'm almost worried that it's already too much of zeitgeist and we're missing a little bit the public debate around it, because I want it. But also we got contacted by every single big media outlet, TV stations, streamers, online stuff. We got contacted by many big brands who want to be partners. But the second part is we're gonna ask our athletes to share their biodata with us. And because obviously it's transparent, they have no reason not. Like this goes from wearables they can wear to blood tests, whatever. And obviously tell us what they own, what they are on, because they have no reason to be afraid.
Right.
That will give us over time the biggest database for performance enhancing drugs, which is incredibly valuable for any form of new drug development and any form of science. So actually, aside of the sports company, we're also going to be a big science company in partnership, and we're going to announce the first partnership soon, in partnerships with biotech pharma companies to develop new performance enhancing drugs.
Oh, wow.
And this is not just relevant for sports, because talking about one of my other big passions, longevity, or in generally combating sort of aging, is very close to performance enhancing. So in terms of science, in terms of medications you're taking, so it's not just about finding new medications and performance enhancers for sports guys, it's gonna be stuff which gonna profit really everybody in the world, because obviously aging is a problem for all of us.
I do want to talk about psychedelics and your company ATAI and how you invested in Compass. You're kind of a self-described teetotaler, like you aren't a big drinker or smoker or, doing psychedelics. How did you get into psychedelics, and how did a kid from a German village start a psychedelics company?
I realized fairly early, like in my teens, that I'm always fairly happy. Doesn't mean, by the way, people that always artificially have bad days, like everybody has. But overall, I have I think life is awesome. I'm happy with myself. And at the same time, I think I'm not dumb. So I always said something in my brain is right. Both from a happiness perspective and from a intellectual perspective. So I don't want to jinx it. So that was my complete mantra my whole life, and still is. Let's not put anything in my body which sort of can ruin that good thing. So that's why I never drank alcohol. That's why I never tried cannabis. I never tried cocaine. I never did anything. And then actually multiple stories coming together, and I do believe a little bit, I'm very spiritual, like I believe in fate, so to say. Like I think something was pushing me towards psychedelics. First of all, there were two very good friends who told me 2-3 years already about it. They kind of hit me, so they did it regularly, and they sort of started telling me, by the way, we're talking now about 2014, so a time when psychedelics were not a part of the public conversation at all.
Yeah.
Full stop. Like it was not there. Like, so they told me about psychedelics. I was always saying, no, thank you. No, I'm not doing that. But I was interested. Then I met a scientist at a dinner, actually not just a scientist, like one of the most famous neuroscientists in Germany. And he told me about psychedelics and that he's still working with them, which by the way, never stopped. So the science around psychedelics was never stopping. It was just a career killer. So not a lot of people did it.
Right.
Yeah, well, now it's a career booster. And then I was in this one moment in the Caribbean with these two friends. They said, again, they're doing a mushroom trip. It was 2014. And I was like, you know what, I want to try it. So, and by the way, that was before I ever zipped on alcohol. Technically, it was the first ever substance I've ever done. And I could talk hours about that alone, but the short version is it was hands down the single most meaningful, deep, important thing, adding even to my already existing level of happiness I've ever done in my whole life.
Wow.
And because we're in biotech, I came out of that trip the next day. I was thinking about it. It was like, holy shit, if it's doing this amount of positivity to me as a happy, healthy person, I can totally see how it can do actually, which was completely forgotten, but which we had actually scientifically proven in the 50s and 60s, how these substances can actually maybe even cure, but at least dramatically improve mental health issues like depression, anxiety, addiction, and whatsoever. And that was the moment when I emotionally decided I want to bring these substances back. And I'm very proud because like nobody, again, this was not like a trend or whatever. It was like, there was actually for 3 years then, from 2014 to 2016, 17, every single person I told about that idea said you're completely insane. By the way, I did some daring things in my life, even now in Hans games, whatever, but the sort of amount of advice not to do it I got for psychedelics was insane. From head of states who said, no, you're our advisor, no, to fellow investors who said, okay, people will not, whatever, trust you anymore, to journalists, to lawyers, to like my colleagues, like everybody said it's a very bad idea. But I believe obviously so much in these substances that I was really following it. And now comes the point, like a little bit of an emotional story and maybe also a little bit of a spiritual one, because I had a trip like at the end of 2016, in a holiday, in a country where it's legal, literally 2 days before New Year's Eve. And for the ones who haven't read about psychedelics, whatever, like the short version is you gain insights. That I think is the neutral we could talk about. But like, and by the way, in a mental health context, if people have depression, anxiety, whatever, it helps them to rearrange their view on them because they gain insights how to deal with them, whatever. So, but in my case, that message, if you want to call it like that, in this trip was, you know that these are good substances. Just go out and talk about it to people, on TV, wherever you can. So literally the mission was, and I'm very proud, this was 2016, I have done it since then every single time. In every meeting, I always bring it up. There's not a single meeting, whatever the meeting is about, with whomever it is, at least I want to mention psychedelics. And the message was, it's just going to be good for you. And I flew from that holiday trip to New York, January 2017. And the first meeting of the year I had with Mike Newbergratz, big shout out. And I went into his office, and I will never forget that because I was like kind of nervous, although Mike is a good friend, because in my head I need to now do that, like from now on in every meeting again. And I cannot emphasize it long enough for me how different the time was, because now like there's not a single dinner I'm not going where people anyway, even if they don't know me, talk about psychedelics.
It's a mainstream
It's the mainstream
topic
but
now,
back then, no, zero. And I go into Mike's office, was a little bit nervous, and he was like, hey, what's up? Like, I was like, let's talk about psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just had a trip, whatever. And Mike was fascinated and had never, he said, like, hey, I think he said he'd done it like 20 years ago in college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like it wasn't, he was like, no, nothing about it. Tell me about it. And then I leave his office, and the next morning he calls me, and he started the call with, this cannot be a coincidence. He said he hadn't talked about psychedelics literally for 20 years. And he said, you sit in my office yesterday and bring up this strange topic. And the next morning, his sister, who runs TED conference, called him. She was on a yoga retreat in Bali. And there was a couple in the yoga retreat who told her that they're working on bringing psilocybin, one psychedelic, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, back for the treatment of mental health issues. But nobody wants to fund them because everybody thinks they're crazy.
Yeah.
And Mike was like, they live in London, you two should meet. I was like, sure. I met them in February 2017. The meeting took an hour. I said, look, I'm your financial backer. Yeah, and we started Compass Pathways together, which is now a listed company and is focusing on psilocybin, which is what I have on my arm here, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. And then I discovered it. I thought about it like there are more psychedelics like DMT, 5-MeO-DMT, ibogaine. Some would say ketamine and MDMA are psychedelics. They're not, but like they adjacent to that world. And Compass always wanted to focus on psilocybin only.
Right.
So I started a second company called ATAI, also stock market listed now, which is doing literally all the other psychedelics and owns my stake in Compass Pathways, where we're still the largest investor.
Yeah, cool. And you helped Compass raise funds for you, Mike, and Peter Thiel.
That was the first round. Yeah, obviously I took Mike in because he made me the intro.
Sure.
Yeah, I had talked to Peter about psychedelics. He was intrigued. So these were my two sort of co-investors in the first round. Yeah.
Right. And, obviously, speaking of psychedelics and, drugs related to MDMA, obviously got like a recent big blow from the FDA. They rejected their application and said, how do you think that'll affect the world of psychedelics in the future of, potential turning these molecules into potential medicines?
It's sad because it delays MDMA, but I want to make clear, because I know, like, again, the media shortened it and was like, oh, it's a blow for psychedelics. Yeah. It's not. Like, unfortunately, the company who did the trials did it in kind of a messy way. I know it's like, because like, I really feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
So I don't want to criticize too much, but like, if you look at them, just one fact, like their phase 3, in biotech, you have phase 1, phase 2, they normally have 2 phase 3, and then hopefully, if it holds what you assume, then you have approval. So their phase 3 trial was roundabout as big as our psilocybin phase 2 trial. So they really did the minimal version because they didn't have a lot of money. And while it's sad, but I always acknowledged when we started Compass and ATAI that it is a controversial topic. I think for no reason. I think it shouldn't be controversial, but I need to accept where we are.
Yeah.
So
they're currently illegal drugs.
Yeah. So my message to my colleagues, which both ATAI and Compass did wonderfully, was like, as little as I like spending too much money, as an investor, I'm very like frugal. But in this case, we cannot save like in the wrong place. Like, we will be up for critique. Yeah, there will be people who, for whatever reason, will poke into our trials.
Right.
Like, so we need to be gold standard in any form, like in the size. Like, size means how many patients you include, how you design it, how you think about it, in everything. Like, unfortunately, the company who did MDMA did the opposite. They did the smallest possible legally trial. Yeah. And then, I don't want to go into details, it's all online, from mistakes to, I think, a little bit like fake data. And so what I want to say is, because it's important, like, the FDA had to reject it. Yeah. And not because MDMA is bad, like, but if you have a bad data set for a good drug, a bad executed data set, they cannot say, oh, because we think it's a good drug, we give you a pass. Like, that is unfortunately, it's not how it works in science. Yeah. Like, you need to do your work. Yeah. So, but it has nothing, if at all, it's showing that our approach, which was always gold standard, raising a lot of money, doing it for profit, by the way, like, having stock market listed companies, whatever, is the right approach. Second, a little bit like the silver lining, like, because I unfortunately think the called original, it's called racemic MDMA, will never see the approval now because they lost years and they would need to raise so much money. And then also the company who did it was very anti-capitalistic, which I always thought was stupid because I think, I mean, you don't need to have Forbes, but like capitalism is the way to go. You raise money, like that's so they never did patents. So they always believed in no patents, whatever. So it's going to be very hard, I think, to bring MDMA racemic back, but we have a novel version of MDMA in the ATAI portfolio. It's called RMDMA.
It's like our ketamine, where it's
exactly. It's a different isomer. So we have full patent protection on it. We have great data. We now decided because I think patients deserve it. MDMA is a potential valuable treatment for especially post-traumatic stress disorder, which a lot of veterans have. Whatever. We decided to really fast track our MDMA so that hopefully we're gonna succeed soon.
Right. And, looking at a future where these medications might be FDA approved, like what kind of future are we looking at? Do you go to the pharmacy to get these drugs, or are they like therapist combination?
Very good point. Yeah. So I believe these drugs are extremely valuable. I believe they shouldn't be legal. I believe they should be available, but in a guided context.
Yeah.
What does it mean? Like not just medically approved, that's the baseline, but we actually applying for that category where you cannot take it alone because they're very strong and you go on a very deep experience, which I would say, again, I'm always careful because we're in the approval process. Hopefully, we finish it soon, but like it always at least helps people. But especially when you do it for a medical reason, depression, for example, the trip or the experience in itself can be rocky. And you need to have somebody next to you who gives you guidance, makes sense, and really literally guides you through the experience. So we don't want to make it prescription drugs, which you can take home, but we want people to be at the doctor, do it with them, and then go home. So but it's not an overnight stay. It's just how you call it, inpatient, like 2 hours, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, to take one question already today. So a lot of people over the last years, and hopefully now finally with MDMA that showed that I really like not just the right, but also have the right intention, said, oh, Christian is saying all of that, because there were people who said, oh, if you are doing it in your holiday, which is true, by the way. So I want to address it openly that obviously I'm doing it. There are countries in the world, they just don't classify it. So it's neither actively legal or not legal, it's just not classified. So, but people always like, if you do it in your holiday and enjoy it so much and it gives you so much, why are you not advocating globally that it should be like cannabis, sold everywhere, available everywhere? I said there's many reasons. The one is like, because I don't do it alone. Like I do it with friends, but friends who are educated, who know what they're doing. One is actually a therapist. Like sort of, I do it in a proper setting. I have people minding me. Second, I'm not doing it for a medical reason, so I totally acknowledge that people who do it for medical reasons might have much more rocky trips, good ones at the end, but needed. But third, super important, that somebody needs to pay all of that. I can afford going to a nice place, have friends with me, whatever, but like there are so many people, they want a therapy obviously to be paid and not going to go to a coffee shop or a cannabis shop and whatever, do it alone, and they can't afford to pay privately for somebody sitting with them. But third, these therapies are incredibly strong, and that's why they're so beautiful. That's why they can make such a difference. By the way, we have nothing else in mental health. Mental health has become the number one problem of our time. If you look at number of patients, more than 1 billion people are in the statistics with a mental health issue, but because it's still a stigmatized disease, we're very sure there are much more people suffering from it than the numbers, than the cost and whatever. So because it's such an important thing and nothing else helps, psychedelics are great, but they're great because they're strong. So, and I looked in the history of psychedelics because people were like, oh, look at the 60s, they gave it out like Smarties. I was like, that's the problem. The 60s were not a role model. And I was hated for that sentence, but I say it over and over again. The 60s were not a role model. Timothy Leary, created by his his loose way and his non-diligent way, like, and he's like, oh, give it to everybody. He created the backslash. He's one of the reasons, amongst others, why it's illegal. Yeah, all the other 10,000 years of recorded history of psychedelic use, and a lot of religions, a lot of practices are built on psychedelics. They did it extremely regulated. So my favorite example is always there is this Greek cult, or has been, the Eleusinian Mysteries. Yeah, the longest lasting, more than 2,000 years, religion centered around psychedelics. And they did it super regulated. They were like twice a year with a priest together, forbidden by death, harder than the FDA, that you do it outside that framework.
Right.
Yeah. And I always said, I want to bring psychedelics actually back into society, but in a way how they have been treated over 10,000 years, with care, with high sort of also respect for the power of psychedelics. But if done properly, in our case, because who are the shamans of our times, the doctors, the therapists, sure. If done in a medical context, I think they have the power to change the world.
Through Apiron, you invest in a range of, from psychedelics to Bitcoin to space lasers and longevity, which is, well, communication lasers, but it's better to say space lasers, right? But yeah, I just kind of wanted to touch on your investment thesis. Like, how are all these things connected in your mind?
Yeah. So, meaning very high level, I believe we live in the most interesting time. Like, I couldn't dream up a more exciting time to be alive, and hopefully alive for long. And I think in the next 20 years, we're gonna change with technological and medical innovation, both the world around us, the physical world, whatever, but also the world inside us, our body, how we age, hopefully not age, how long we live, how happy we are. Most likely we're going to be smarter, whatever. We change everything inside and outside us. And I know there are people are afraid of, and I think things can go wrong, but I'm an eternal optimist. I can see a future which is really great for all of us, where we're happier, healthier, live longer, can really follow our passion, whatever. And I want to be a small part in sort of creating that future. So that's sort of the overarching headline. We have 4 pillars. Biotech is still the biggest one, which is where I come from. Right. I think biotech is just had a hard time the last 3 years. Also, if you look at the ATAI share price, I mean, biotech as a sector got obliterated. Yeah, because interest rates up, long-dated cash flows, whatever. But biotech going to come back because it's such a valuable industry, and it's also such a fulfilling industry, because every time you succeed with small stuff, big stuff in biotech, you do help people with mental health, with cancer, whatever you work on. Like, sort of, I think biotech is just like, is an obvious thing where you create the future. We focus within biotech on mental health and on longevity. Why? I think you wrote it in the article. I think it's just like the total addressable market is 100%. Like, which person would you meet which doesn't live longer and healthier, not just long and healthier, and doesn't want to be happier? Like, these are the two big sort of dreams, demands, I would call it, like every human being has. Yeah, everyone wants that. Yeah, to be happy and healthy. Yeah. So then we have a pillar which is very simple, obvious, crypto and any crypto-related companies. I just believe in Bitcoin. There's almost nothing else. I think it's very obvious. Like, I think the world needs always a store of value, which protects the wealth of any individual of the greedy hands of politicians. If you look at the track record, every single government in the history of humanity, there's not a single exemption, has not ruined their currency. There's not a single currency where politicians, leaders, head of states, over time, over the last 10,000 years, were prudent. Every empire, every reservoir is often connected with ruining the currency. So this is why people instinctivly, since humans are around, we're looking for stores of value. And we have some which vanished again, from cows to pearls, seashells, whatever, seashells. But like gold is the sort of the winner in that. So, but honestly, gold has no other value, more or less. It's a little bit of like
looks pretty.
Looks pretty, whatever. But like the core value of gold is a store of value. By the way, what I just learned, maybe I say something but like, why? Because gold cannot be produced on Earth. So all the gold on Earth, and people seem to have known that instinctively. Right. Gold is just being produced in a dying star. So all the gold on Earth has been seeded with comets somewhere. but it can't be made here. Never.
Yeah.
We don't have the power to make it. So it's really
the alchemist tried that.
yeah.
Didn't work out.
But so it's really immutable, and Bitcoin is just beautifully both built on the reason why gold became the store of value and just improved it because it makes it easy to transport it. Yeah, you don't have the whole nature devastation by harvesting gold whatsoever. So, and I just believe we need it. Yeah. So, and by the way, people are always like, oh yeah, but what's other use cases? There will be other use cases. We're actually working on one big use case, how we hopefully can improve the Bitcoin, or improve, how can we add on the Bitcoin network that it also can be used more efficiently for applications, whatever. But in the core, I think it's almost enough to be a store of value. And Bitcoin still is just, I haven't looked it up today, but like it's around about 1/10 of gold.
Yeah.
So if Bitcoin just goes par with gold, I think it will exceed it. I have a 10x with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's my sort of long answer why I love Bitcoin.
Right.
And once you love Bitcoin, there is many sort of investments around it, from exchanges to data center companies, Bitcoin mining, and a lot of them morphed then into AI companies as well. So that's sort of that pillar.
Right.
Then we have a little bit of a catch-all, future tech, like from space tech to, I'm very passionate about novel foods because I think a lot of the problems of the world, when we have a lot of them, because people sometimes hear me talking and say, oh, Christian thinks everything is rosy, whatever. No, there are a lot of problems, but I think technology will solve them, not like make them worse. So I think one is like I don't think there's overpopulation, but we need to think about how we can sustainably feed people, whatever. So I believe very much in lab-grown meat, fish, and all of that. So we have a lot of investments there, but it's this whole pocket future tech. And then we have a little bit of an antidote to these three, let's say, tech and biotech businesses, which we call happiness, leisure, and hospitality. The thesis behind is that I believe over the next 10 years already, very sooner than we think, the combination of AI and robotics will give every human being much more free time.
Right.
And so we think, and by the way, I believe, equal or the same pay in terms of you get the same value in money, because I think otherwise we're going to have a revolution. So governments will either actively force companies to pay the same for much less work, or companies, by the way, doing it kind of already now. Like Jamie Dimon said, he might allow people like just to work 3 days and from at home and whatever, because they don't need that people, but companies feel instinctively, even if we could fire more, like we shouldn't, because like someone that's gonna blow up. But long story short, I believe people will have much more free time with the same amount of purchasing power. And that's why we invest a lot in companies which will help people make the most out of the time, from hotels, brands and real estate, to live entertainment, to content production whatsoever.
Yeah, that's interesting. And one thing I wanted to touch on before we let you go is, you've said in an investment memo that sports is kind of sports and celebrity is like the new cult, the new religion. I was wondering if you could kind of dive into that.
Well, it's what I just said is before the cult comes, like, it's like people will have a bigger share of wallet, which they attach or which they give to how to spend their free time. So anything what is already there, like sports, celebrities, whatever, which is kind of helping people to enjoy their life, just gonna become bigger. So I told you, like, if I could buy an index over the top 20 celebrities, I would buy it because I think their value is gonna go up because people are gonna spend more share of wallet on them.
Right.
At the same time, a little bit philosophical, I think we're kind of dissolving some of the original like ties of society, like religion, families, whatever, and we're kind of in a transition period where we're like and it happened before, like where we're replacing certain values with new values, and I think people need that feeling of belonging. Like, sort of religion has actually, I think, two components, or even not just any kind of community. You have, in the religion case, you have the supernatural or the spiritual part.
Yeah.
But if you leave that even out, like I always will say, not every person who goes to the church is very spiritual. A lot of them just like the community as well. So religions have also just provided for community, sticking together, whatever. And a soccer club at least fulfills that part. I deeply believe Taylor Swift God forbid, no, I think she's a great artist. Like, it's not like it's political. Don't say anything.
Swift,
no, but I think she's a great artist. But I think that she's that popular,
right.
You can't explain alone with the quality of her music.
Sure.
I think this became a movement. There's people like they call themselves Swifties. They want to. It's a feeling.
Yeah,
it's like a community. It's an identity, and we dissolve so many other identities that I think sports, celebrities, whatever, replacing that.
Related to that, I've heard you say something about, immune system related to mental health. I was wondering if you could kind of expand on that.
Yeah, so talking about Taylor Swift as a very positive example, like I was thinking a lot in the whole journey when we were working on psychedelics, like one of the underexplored areas of research is why do people get a mental health issue in the first place? And especially why do people, there are certain elements of the human nature we all have to go through. Nobody can prevent it. Like if life goes normal, your parents gonna die before you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if you're the best, hardest working person in the world, you're gonna have a hard time in the job somewhere. Yeah, you someone gonna be dumped by a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever. There are gonna be these hard times, and while it's hard for all of us, some people go through it and just then someone come out of it, but some people slide into a mental health issue. That is at least one of the starting points of mental health issues. And the whole area is called resilience research. So I looked a lot into it, and my personal takeaway, it's not fully scientifically proven at all. That's a disclaimer, but I think it's a good point because that everybody can take it away for their own sort of daily life, and a lot of scientists I talk to say you might be onto something, at least in the way I put it, and I want to put in more research, is like I believe deeply that we have a mental health immune system. As we have an immune system in our body, which is fighting diseases or whatever, we have a mental health immune system, which is when we experience these hard times, making sure we go through it. And I believe it consists of three things. It consists of faith, purpose, and love, community. Let me explain. Faith is like, I think, even if we don't like to admit it, we need something transcendental, bigger in our life. And I mentioned it before, but I think it's important. Like, I'm very spiritual, and I think it's very, I always say, I don't know, I cannot prove if God exists, but I think believing in a higher being makes you a happier person. Yeah, so it's just a win-win. If God exists, you made it right. Like, if not, like, you at least had a better life. Yeah. Sure. But I thought, why is that? Like, and take you, like, you told me you have 2 children. Instinctively, and it's almost sad that we're not talking about it more in society, because that is pushing it sort of in your subconsciousness. You are worried about them every day. Yeah. Like, if your daughter is on camp, you're like, hopefully she's fine, hopefully nothing is happening. Yeah, and that constant nagging pain almost, or worry, yeah, is a risk and is weakening your immune system. While if you are believing in something higher, it's telling you you're gonna be all right, and even, God forbid, something is happening to the loved ones, whatever, you're gonna see them again somewhere, because there is a bigger reason for everything. And people, I think, again, I don't wanna claim higher being exists, but I think we need to be, we're wired to be religious, and it's good for us. Yeah. Second, people need purpose. We all wanna wake up and wanna be part of society and wanna know, to have some passion for something. Yeah. And third, the most important one, we are wired to be social animals. We want to have community, close family. So unfortunately, if I look at our societies, especially in the West, all these 3 things, faith, purpose, and love, are actually on the decline. Yeah, faith is obviously on the decline, but I think it's making us miserable. Then AI and robotics instinctively, or tells people, and even if they don't fully know what it is, the bus driver knows that most likely they're not going to drive the bus in 10 years because AI is going to drive the bus. So I think we see an erosion of purpose where people are deeply terrified because they think there is no place for them. I do believe there is a place, but we need sort of, in always in periods of change, it's very sort of emotionally challenging. And then third, I don't want to make a political statement, but I think we're too much as society erode traditional family models. Like we're, we don't have intergenerational families anymore, not a lot. Like, also if I think I grew up, like I had so many camps, community groups, whatever. I don't, so it's all a little bit eroding.
Right.
Yeah, and again, it's at the end, that's my personal explanation as well. While if we look at the hard numbers, mental health issues are incredibly on the rise.
Isn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. If I look at the charts of depression, anxiety, whatever, and I wouldn't say what it is, and I would show you the chart, you would say that's an infectious disease. It's kind of,
spreading.
it doesn't make sense. Yeah, and I think the underlying reason is that our immune system is weakening. I think we're a little bit like instinctively holding on to things, like the Swifties, like we're holding on to communities we can find, like, or you think like older people, they might go to church like more when they lost all of their family, whatever. So, but I think what are the messages I want to tell you, like if you think about these three things, I think you can do things every day, which a little bit like sort of help you keeping that. And then hopefully people that don't get mental health issues in the first place, when they do, I hope someone soon gonna have psychedelics. Which, by the way, last sentence, if you look at what psychedelics truly do, if I would describe it in a non-medical, non-scientific way, then they help you discover exactly these three things.
Right.
Almost every person who does psychedelics comes out of a trip and has some sort of spiritual idea.
Right.
Yeah. They all learn more about themselves, and it helps them refine their purpose in life if they've lost it. And every single person, there's literally, and we've treated thousands of people, comes out and says the cheesy sentence, at the end it's all about love.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I think psychedelics are so powerful to help with mental health issues.
Yeah. Well, great. Christian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It was a great pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.